So the next object I would like us to look at is the rectangle, and it is actually at this particular point. You can click at the down drop, and there we have the rectangle. And with this one, you can just proceed, click to activate it. Now, you should note that once I hover the cursor of any of this particular object, there is a tooltip that actually displays. Now, the tooltip has below the description, just before the expansion, there's some line. Okay, there's some information that are written in capital letters. Just above the place F1 for help. You can note that there is place F1 for help. So above that, we have rectangle. Now, that particular rectangle is actually the command line shortcut, or you can use that particular option of typing that name to activate the rectangle tool. Of course, that will be the same for any object. For example, the line, I can hover the cursor over the line, and you can note that there is a line, or there is a line letter, or the line word, and that is of course shown in capital letters, and there is a graphic before it. So that of course is called the command line shortcut, or there's the name. You can use that particular command to activate the rectangle without using this particular option of activating the tool itself. For example, for the rectangle, one of the options that I have for activating it is proceeding to this point. You expand, and then you click at rectangle there, and now you can proceed and add it. There is also that particular option of just typing in what we have there. You can note that it is actually showing rectangle. Again, even if it expands, even if this particular tooltip expand, at the bottom you can see that we have the rectangle name shown in capital letter. So that is the command shortcut where you can proceed and type in. So for example, I can proceed and when I'm in selection mode, I can proceed and type in that. It is going to be added at the command line. You can see that we have the rectangle there. So click to activate it, and of course you can now proceed and add it like that. So that is the name itself. You can decide to activate a particular object using the name, and of course this will be the case if you get used to AutoCAD. Let's say for example I want to add a polyline. So for polyline you just need to type in p line. So that is there it is. So p line, and then we have you need to choose the p line there. That is the command that we need, and now you can activate it. For a line, you just need to proceed and type in line, and you can note that the line is going to be shown there. Of course, there are various options that we have here. Other tools, we are only concerned with the line. Click on the line tool. Now you can proceed and add the line. Another tool, for example, is an arc. So you can proceed and type in arc, that, and then you're going to note that there will be the arc tool there. So that is usually another way of activating these particular tools. Now in this case we are only concerned with the rectangle, so there it is, and we are going to proceed and click to activate it. You can use that particular option, or else you can just proceed and type this name in the command line before activating it, and you are going to be taken to this particular drawing mode, or the input mode. Now in this case I can click to start placing the rectangle, and with the rectangle you need to define the first point, and then you define the corner point. So the next corner point, I probably want the rectangle to proceed up to that point. I can now proceed and click add it like that. So it's like you are defining the diagonal, and with that we are going to have the rectangle placed. Now you can achieve that using the line and also the polyline, but of course it is faster when you use the rectangle. Now you should note that if I select this particular rectangle that I have just added, you can note that the 4 segments are actually polylines. So it's more of a polyline than a line. And of course in this case we note that you can even convert to an arc, as you can see. So that is something that we should note. Now you can proceed and explode it so that you have it as a line you want to. So you can click on explode after selecting it, and now you can note we are in a position to select the segments. So that is it. When you're adding a rectangle, you can okay, it is more useful and more efficient to use the dynamic input. So I can click at this point, then I type in the first or the length. Probably want it to be about 14,000. You can just proceed and type 14,000 and then tap the tab key. So you tap the tab key to switch to the next dimension. In this case, it is the width. And then there we can type in probably 9,000 like that, and then you press enter. So you can use the DYN or the dynamic input, proceed and use exact values or the exact dimension when you're adding the rectangle. Remember to switch between the various inputs or the various dimensions. You need to use the tab key. So first of all, you proceed and add the length or the value for this line and also the value for this line. So to switch between the inputs, the dynamic inputs is okay, is possible when you use the tab key. So that is it. Remember, the dynamic input is going to be there if this toggle is actually on. If it is off, the dynamic input is not useful or is not going to be in a position to be used. Now, when you're adding a rectangle, we have a rectangle there. We can note that at the command, before even we click to start placing the first point, you can note that you can specify the first corner point, and we have done that. But of course, you can decide to have other settings. And one of them that you've come across, especially when we are dealing with the polyline, is the width. So we can start there. You can proceed and click at the width, or else just proceed and type W and then you press enter. So you specify the width for the rectangle, probably want it to be 500, and then you proceed and type enter. So if I add this particular line, it is going to have a width. Of course, with this one, the width is uniform, as you can see. Yeah. Remember, for the polyline, we added the width for the starting point and the width for the end point. But with this particular rectangle, the width is only added once. That is, it is uniform. So if you proceed and activate the rectangle tool once again, and you start placing it, you are going to note that the width is going to be there. If you want to remove the width, you can proceed and activate it. And before even you click to start placing, you can click at the width, or else type W and then you press enter. So let's proceed and click at the width, and then remember the width here is actually 500. So we want to be 0 so that we remove it. So proceed and type in 0 and proceed and add and click enter. And of course, the line is going to have no width. Now, if I want to activate the last command, in this case was rectangle, you can proceed and type, you can proceed and press enter on your keyboard, and now you can proceed and choose one of these options. So we've seen the width. The next thing that I want us to see is the thickness. You can add a thickness to this particular polyline. Now, I think this particular thickness, we can just call it like height. So you can create a box out of it. So let's proceed and click at the thickness, or let's type in T and then press enter on your keyboard. Let's proceed and type in T and then you press enter on your keyboard. So you specify the thickness for the rectangles. In this case, the thickness is like the height. If we take it like in a 3D geometry, we are going to see that. Let's specify 4,000 and then you press enter. And then we proceed and add it like that. Now, if we proceed and change the orientation such that we have a view that is an isometric view, you can note that we have this particular box. It's like let's say it's a box, yes. Of course, it is simply created using the rectangle, and then you give a width, a thickness. In this case, the thickness is like the height from this point up to this point, like that. So that is it. I'll proceed back. Now, if you activate the rectangle tool, I'll proceed and remove the thickness. So click at the thickness and then you type in 0. and then you press enter, so the thickness is going to be reduced. The other things that we can specify for this particular rectangle, one of them is a chamfer, and a chamfer and a fillet are somehow related because they affect the corners. So let me proceed and click at the chamfer here. And then you need to specify the first chamfer distance. Probably we want it to be about 600. So specify 600 by typing, and then you press enter. And then you need to specify the second chamfer distance, so 600 as well, and then you press enter. But if I click to start placing, you are going to note that the corners of this particular rectangle have a chamfer. So of course, if you need to add something like that, you can do so using the rectangle. I'm going to proceed and click at the rectangle to activate it once again, or else you can just press enter on your keyboard. And we want to remove the chamfer. In this case, I'll type in 0 for the first chamfer distance, press enter, 0, press enter. And now we want to add a fillet. Click on the fillet, or else type F on and then press enter. And in this case, you need to specify the fillet radius. Probably want it to be about 1200. Press enter. And now we can proceed add it at this point. You can see how the corners have been affected. You can proceed and add or use the DYN, that is the dynamic input. You can use the dynamic input to specify the various dimensions or the various ranges in a more precise manner. So proceed and click to add it like that. So that is it. You can as well specify the elevation as we have seen. So you can just proceed and type E and then press enter, or else click at this particular command and let's press enter. You need to specify the elevation for the rectangle. In this case, the elevation is the distance from the plane where we are adding. We are going to see that. Let's say, for example, we define it as 2500 and then we press enter. We can now proceed and add our rectangle like that. Again, it has the chamfer, so let's not forget like that. Let's not forget that. So that of course is it. Now of course I'll proceed and click at this point. I'm going to orbit a little bit. Hold down the shift key to orbit, or else you can use the view cube to orbit. So I'm going to hold down my shift key to orbit. Now you should note that this particular rectangle here is actually at a higher point compared to others that are on that particular plane. And we can try to look at this particular side view. So there it is, and the others are actually lying on this plane. So this is the elevation distance that you define when you are adding this particular rectangle. The elevation, you define it from this point. Probably I want it to be 0. Proceed and press enter. Again, you can decide to combine these particular settings. For example, I may want to have the fillet. Currently we have the fillet, and also I may want to have a thickness and a width. Let me proceed and start with the width. In this case, I want a width of about 600. Press enter. And then I may want a thickness of about 4000. I press enter like that. So I have combined them. In this case, I can now proceed and add this particular rectangle like that. It has a chamfer. Again, if you proceed to an isometric view, I'll click at this particular point. You can note that it has this particular thickness, that of course is the height, and then of course it has a width. Remember, you have this width from this point all the way to this point. You may add a width to this line. So that is it. That is the rectangle that we have. Now to proceed, and you can proceed and remove the settings that we have. So as you can see, if you proceed and have the settings that you had there before, they are going to still be recorded. You proceed and add a rectangle like that, it is going to inherit the previously set settings. If you want to remove them, you can just activate the rectangle, and then you start with the width. We have 0, press enter. Thickness, we have 0, press enter. And then for the fillet, we have 0, and then we press enter. Now we revert to the original type of a rectangle that can be created like that. I'll press enter to activate the rectangle once again, and I'll click to start placing. Now once you click to start placing, the dynamic input options, the command line options here are going to change, and of course you can decide to define the area of the rectangle. So the rectangle where you clicked, the length, that is the length and the width, they are going to be defined by the area that you put here. You can decide to add the dimensions from this point other than using the dynamic input. So you add it like that from this point. So if you click on dimensions, you can proceed and specify the length for the rectangles, like from this point. So you specify the length and the width. Probably in this case, we can type in 6,000, plus enter, and the width you define it like 20,000. Then you press enter. You can note that they have been added from that point or from this point using the dimensions. Now you just need to click to specify the direction. For example, I want it to be this particular direction. So that is it. So once we have said, the option to add the area dimensions only appear after you click to start placing. You can note they will appear here. Another important settings that you get here, or another command that we get here, is the rotate. You can click on rotate. You may want to rotate your rectangle after placing. As you can see, it is there and it is ready to rotate. So in this case, you can proceed and rotate it like that. After you choose the direction of rotation, you can now proceed and add it. Of course, this one we have not rotated it at all. So let's proceed and rotate it. That, click on rotate, specify the rotation angle to be somewhere there. Now we can specify the length. So remember how, okay, you can see how the rectangle have been rotated.